I hope you did not miss the first Supercross of the season. Anaheim won this past weekend. If you did miss it, if you don't know who won, disclaimer, this podcast is chock full of results. Spoiler alert, if you will, tune out right now. But if you did tune in, like myself, great racing, battled the elements, lots of drama, but you're probably left wondering, what's wrong with Jason Anderson? Our series champion ended up 14th on the night, just didn't look like himself. We'll talk about that on our first Supercross recap of the season, starting now. Welcome to our first ever Supercross recap. We're talking Anaheim 1, 2019. The gates dropped this weekend. Lots of drama, lots of intrigue, lots of rain, if you will. Some call it the great equalizer, that is rain and mud. I'm not so sure. This track was pretty tame. I think this track was the great equalizer until it rained. And what I mean by that is, it was tight. It was one-lined. It was hard to pass. And I'm glad it rained. It really opened things up a bit. I think, the start was huge on this track. They never really were able to pick up much speed and, again, move around and get around guys. Even Eli Tomac echoed that while he was on the podium. Just not a great layout. And that is not uncommon at Anaheim 1. Usually the track's pretty tame. Racing's fairly tight, and it's pretty well balanced. I think we'll have a better idea of where everyone is at next week when they travel to Phoenix. A large stadium floor. I'm sure that they're going to open things up a bit. So stay tuned to that, but it is what it is. It rained. It was Anaheim 1, and the racing was really good. We had a new winner in Colt Nichols, and Justin Barcia notched a win for Yamaha, his first in a long time, and Yamaha's first in a very long time. Now back to the 250 class. Colt Nichols, solid win, his first ever win, and I don't want to say that no one thought he could win. I'm sure plenty of people had him penciled in to win A1, but I wasn't sure, and I'd actually picked AC. But Nichols is a really hard guy to gauge, having been injured the past couple of years, joins the series late or gets injured midstream. He obviously had good speed, but he was never completely healthy, so it's tough to kind of gauge that. Now, I don't know. He won the race really going away. He won it pretty easy. I think next week will be a better representation of where he's going to be at speed-wise for the entire series, but hats off to him. Great win and well-deserved. Ferrandis got second. That was really kind of an uneventful main for Dylan, but I think he's got to come out of A1 happy with the points that he got, considering the conditions. He even commented on the podium that, hey, it's easy to make a mistake out here. Second place is really as good as anything, and, we'll move on to Phoenix or Glendale. McElrath was third. He's another guy there that I put up with Cianciarillo. I think Cianciarillo, Ferrandis, and McElrath probably have the most speed in the class, but that remains to be seen. Again, Shane, nothing to hang his head about. He's got good points heading into Glendale. He's a good starter, and he's won quite a few races over the past few seasons. So I think anything short of the title this year would be probably a disappointment for him. RJ Hampshire was in fourth. I almost picked him, at least for my fantasy team, not to win, but RJ's solid. He's always getting good results, and we'll see if he does better in different conditions next week too. But he's a great rider. And then, of course, Adam Cianciarillo, who looked like he was about to take the whole shot and run away with this thing. I think he had the best speed all day. He definitely didn't have issues with it being muddy, but a lot of mistakes ultimately ended Adam's day in fifth place. I think, for top five guys, he's probably got to walk away, the most disappointed, especially with the start that it looked like he had. And Adam is expected to win. He's expected to get first place and win titles. And he's been around for a while now, and he's come up on the short end of the stick the past few years in the West Coast Series here for the Lights. So, again, anxious to see what's going to happen with all these guys next week and see if anybody else gets into the mix. Garrett Marchbanks, his first Supercross, he got sixth place. Dakotas, he's been around a while, seventh. Jacob Hayes coming out of the Arena Cross Series in eighth. Blows, another guy that's been around for a long time, ninth. That was a good ride for him. and Canadian rider Jess Pettis a solid 10th place. So a pretty well-rounded field, and overall that was a really exciting race. Now, during the earlier portions of the race, obviously, if you watched it, you saw Hampshire and Cianciarulo hook them up. They got together, and ultimately it didn't end well for Adam. Now, I'd read that they had actually got together even earlier in the race and both went down. I didn't see that on TV. I cannot confirm nor deny that happened. What I did see was Adam took RJ wide, left him a little bit of real estate, to get out of the turn. But apparently RJ took great exception to that and went through the whoops and really chopped Adam off. Adam didn't have anywhere to go, and he kind of got the short end of the stick. Plenty of chatter about that on Twitter and Instagram afterward. And bear with me here, I got a rant. If I'm not mistaken, they're both sponsored by at least one company. They're both sponsored by the same manufacturer, and even the manufacturer put the video up and asked if it was, quote unquote, fair or foul, which makes me wonder what won't people do, what won't accounts do to get engagement when you're pitting, your sponsored riders against each other on something like that. Not, in my opinion, not cool, but end rant. Anyway, my opinion on the takeout, if you will, or the aggressive riding. It's racing. I think with Adam making that aggressive move in the turn prior, he probably needed to be mindful of that and run inside in the next turn. Easier said than done, seeing as how he was coming out of the whoops. Odds are he was pegging it wide open, trying to get through the whoops, trying to get away, and it's tough to just shut it down at the end of the whoops. And the track was slick, but ultimately door was left wide open. RJ slid in there. And I think he made his point, and that pretty much kind of settled the battle between the two. Again, RJ ended up finishing 4th, and Adam finished the race in 5th place. On to the 450s. Now we know Justin Barcia got 1st, Kenny came in 2nd, Tomac 3rd, Wilson 4th after leading 3/4 of the race, Cooper Webb in 5th, AP Aaron Plessinger 6th, Malcolm Stewart in 7th, Muscan 8th, Chad Reed 9th, which actually surprised me considering how he qualified, and then Cole Seeley rounded out the top 10. Back to Barcia, first win since Seattle 2013, and this particular win here at Anaheim 1 was almost an anniversary, if you will, with his first ever 450 win, which came in Phoenix or Glendale in 2013. That was his first ever win. So cool story for Justin. He really looked like he was on the outs in terms of his career. Last year, I think he was even sourcing, options to ride in Europe, but ultimately kind of lucks into a ride with Yamaha, delivers solid results in the Supercross and Motocross Series, and now here he is. He won A1. He's off to a great start, and he's got a good shot at the title. So we'll see how it plays out. That would obviously make for a fairy tale ending, if you will, but there's quite a bit of stiff competition. Ken Roxon coming in 2nd, being one of those competitors. Kenny's a smart rider. He's going to take what he can get. Obviously, he wants to win. I think that tears him up a little bit, and he needs to prove to himself that he can win again, coming back from all these injuries. But a solid ride from him. That's about what I would expect in the mud. And again, as we transition away from the mud, get the bikes cleaned up, and head to Arizona, we'll see. We'll get a better mark on where Kenny's speed is this season. Eli Tomac. Wow, hate to say it. This is oftentimes the norm with Eli. Amazing speed, really picked it up in the second half of the race, but a bad heat race and a bad start really put him in the hole, and actually that was a pretty impressive ride. If you'd asked me, with 12, 13 minutes to go, if Eli was going to get a 3rd place, I would have said no way, but what the track kind of opened up with the mud and with the moisture, so hats off to Eli, and just kind of a bad day for him. He had good qualifying, but the heat race, it really sucked. And Eli, my opinion, he doesn't do well on these tracks that aren't a little bit more open where he can move around and get creative. So that's probably one of the best results Eli could have really hoped for, especially considering the start Saturday night. So he's off to a good start, way better than last year too, where he was leading the race by 7 seconds and then went over the bars and ultimately kind of ruined the season. So Eli's playing the long game, Kenny's playing the long game, Justin's playing the long game. The wins are nice, but they're going to want to be shooting for the podium on a weekly basis. 4th place for Dean Wilson. I can't say that this really surprises me. Dean is a supremely talented rider. The fact that he led for 15 of the 20 laps, 3/4 of the race, that surprised me more than anything. And there were a couple points in the race when he had a pretty significant gap, and I thought he was going to take his first ever win. Ultimately, it didn't work out that way. He faded. Some of the titans of the series, if you will, were able to get him. And but I think if you ask Dean, that's a good result for him. But also, he's never won. He led for so long. I think that probably gutted him a little bit. But solid ride for Dean. And again, I'm not really sure where to place him speed wise going forward. We'll have to assess. Moving forward with some of these drier rounds. I'm not sure if this was a byproduct of the weather or if Dean's going to be up there all season long. 5th place went to Cooper Webb, and this is another one of those things. Looked like Coop, just like Adam Cianciarulo, was going to get a really good start, and I picked Cooper to be up there as one of those guys tonight because he's a good mud rider. If you look back at 2016 Seattle, gnarly track, he was very fast there. So I had Coop slotted to be a contender to win on the night. Unfortunately, goes down in the first turn and then just goes into a hero mode, if you will, and rallies back to 5th place on a tough track under tough circumstances and actually clocks the fastest time by nearly a full second over everybody else. So good ride for Cooper. That's something to build on. Obviously, he's paid to get up there and win, but I don't think he can be disappointed with that. That being said, not unlike Dean Wilson, I'm not really sure where he's going to be when tracks dry out or when they get more technical or when they're not muddy. But this is kind of a make-or-break year for Cooper, so we'll see where that goes. AP, Aaron Plessinger, 6th place. 6th place on the night. Good rookie debut for Aaron. Now, as I was dealing with my fantasy Supercross picks for the evening earlier that afternoon, I knew it was going to rain. I knew it was going to get a little bit sloppy, so I slotted AP in there just based on how he performed in the 250 class in the past, and he rode pretty well. Admittedly, I honestly thought he would finish a little bit higher in the mud, but that just goes to show how hard it is to ride those 450s, and he was probably dealing with a few nerves. His first ever 450 Supercross, but pretty good ride for AP. I think he's going to be happy with that, and we'll see where he's at moving forward. Malcolm Stewart ended up in 7th. He ran 2nd for a lot of the race. He was up there battling with guys. Plessinger challenged him at times. He battled with Tomac a little bit, but ultimately makes too many mistakes and ends up in 7th place. I'm really interested to see how Malcolm does moving forward. He trained the entire offseason. He's been with a team for a long period of time. He hasn't had the luxury of that, at least in the 450 class in prior seasons. So I think he's a guy with a lot of skills. I'm hoping to see him run up towards the front in the future. 8th place, Marvin Musquin. I really wasn't sure where to slot him coming into the race. We know he's coming back from a knee injury. He hasn't been riding a ton. Marvin is a play-it-safe guy, especially considering the circumstances. But I'm not going to lie, I would have figured Marvin would have finished a little bit better. I don't know if he's going to be happy with 8th, but I guess that depends on how severe his injury is and where he's at in his recovery. But 8th place on the night, that's where Marvin ends up. Chad Reed, a little bit of a surprise for me for the good. He had to go to the LCQ. He rode solid there. He was never really in jeopardy of not making the main, though when you're sitting on that LCQ gate, you really are in jeopardy of not making the main. That's a risky race to have to run to get into the main, but Chad did it, and then he gutted it out. He toughed it out, ended up with 9th. The first race on that Suzuki with JGR. So if I'm Chad, I don't know if I'm stoked on 9th or not. Chad probably isn't. He's a competitor, but that's where he ends up. And admittedly, with a 20 or 21st gate pick, that's a pretty good finish for Chad. And then Cole Seeley, 10th place on the night. We know Cole had a significant injury last year, so his first, at least AMA, his first race on this scale. I know he did some stuff in Europe, but 10th place, Cole Seeley's really talented. I would expect him to do better. Mud's probably not his thing. Again, a lot of stuff is yet to be determined or yet to be settled. We'll see how Cole does moving forward. Then the big one, really, Jason Anderson, 14th place. What the heck happened there? So not a great start to the season for Jason. I'm sure that's probably not the way he wanted to kick things off, being the defending series champion and coming off of 4 wins last year, 6 wins in his career. He's averaging about 2 wins per season since he jumped in the 450 class in 2016. There was a lot of speculation or rumors that Jason had been hurt earlier in the week and was seen in the hospital with holding his wrist. Nobody can confirm any of those rumors, so I'm not sure, but he qualified pretty good. Heat race, not so great, but kind of like Tomac, not kind of a tough track to pass on. So I didn't put a bunch of stock in that. And again, his qualifying times were respectable. I think he qualified sixth, and the top 15 were all very tight. So kind of uncharacteristic for Jason. If you average out his wins over the course of these past 3 seasons. He does average about 2 wins a season, but he's super consistent. He's almost Dungey-like, with his with him being on the podium. So this is interesting. Jason rode Seattle last year, total mudfest. I believe he was second to Tomac. So it's not like he can't ride mud. Maybe he just had an off night. Maybe he got tight. Maybe he pumped up. Maybe goggles were an issue. I shouldn't say we may. We will probably never know unless Jason ends up having to abandon the series for some significant injury. But if you take a look at the lap times, he's his best is 4 seconds off Cooper Webb. And like I said, he just kind of dropped like a rock. So it'll be really interesting. I'm sure that'll be one of the storylines moving into next week is, what's wrong with Jason? Where's Jason going to finish in Glendale, so on and so forth. So look forward to that. We don't have any answers here. We just know that Jason has really been the model of consistency over the past few years, and to see him get 14th, I mean, it's not the end of the world. We've seen people not finish well and still win the title, but you won't, his margin for error moving forward isn't as great, and as aggressive as that guy rides, who knows what's going to happen. So again, looking forward to next week and seeing, where the cards fall. And again, I believe a dry track, believe it or not, is going to be a better representation of who is where in terms of speed. So really looking forward to that. Glad you joined us for our first Supercross recap here. Anaheim 1, Ben Motorcycle Adventures podcast. You should expect our Supercross recaps to come out each and every Monday. And again, always appreciate those who take the time to review and subscribe to our podcast. We will see you next week. Thank you for listening.